Hello and welcome to our second week of our Trim Healthy Wisdom book study. Now, this is going to be starting to get a little more intense. I do have some free resources that are going to be coming over the next few months to go along with this book study. We aren't quite there yet. They're going to be posted strategically as we study certain chapters. But with this book study, if you read chapter 6 and 7, you know we're starting to get into it. We're starting to talk about timing and protein. So those are subjects that I think a lot of you might be super familiar with, especially if you've been in my boot camp. There is a reason that my boot camp gets such amazing reviews and thousands and thousands and thousands of women to goal weight, because we focus on these basics in particular and then some others that people tend to ignore that or maybe aren't even aware of that are key parts of the Trim Healthy Mama foundational plan that can help a lot. So remember, our goal with the Trim Healthy Wisdom book is to make our bodies burning bodies, right? We want to be getting our bodies to speed up our metabolism essentially. Now, my experience with intermittent fasting, which I've shared before, is that I was super stuck, and I was a coach. And all of a sudden, it felt like Trim Healthy Mama wasn't working for me. And I desperately wish this book had come out then, because I did a lot of these things the hard way and I tried a lot of things that didn't work. What ended up working is using this is covered in Trim Healthy Wisdom, but also in the Trim Healthy Mama podcast, using some strategic hormones. I needed progesterone. And so that really leveled me out. And I really think in my case, I was really stuck because I was not sleeping hardly at all. And your body really won't let go of fat. In my experience with both me and my clients, if you're not getting any sleep, you need sleep for all of your body systems, excuse me. So since I wasn't sleeping, I was very metabolically unhealthy. I needed kind of a whole overhaul from a cellular level, and getting on progesterone helped me. That's not going to be for everybody. It depends on what your body needs. But I started taking progesterone from a doctor and started seeing some positive results. But while I wish I had had this book before, I was super stuck. So I've been stuck 3 times on THM. And it had always been that once I regained weight from a baby, and then I went through an extremely stressful time period, and I had really high cortisol levels. My cortisol was out of control. It took some time and work with a doctor and some of the THM principles that I teach in boot camp to reverse that cortisol overload that my body was dealing with. Sleep was key, as I already mentioned. And then I tried intermittent fasting. So I was starting to get good results from the addressing the cortisol issue and the stress problem, and some things that I had tried with clients that I kind of didn't even think about trying with myself. And then I thought, well, I found this woman on YouTube who seems like an expert, seems to promise the moon when it comes to fasting. I saw a former THM coach kind of talking about getting into fasting. She did not work with Trim Healthy Mama anymore. And I thought, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I'll try it. Now, the thing that I feel like I should have paid attention to is a lot of the people who are experts in intermittent fasting, like this doctor and some people I've seen online, are not at their goal weights, and they've been doing it for years. I have seen a few people who fast and do well for a time, but typically start gaining it back. But I didn't care about any of that. I just was like, I need an answer. I need a miracle. So I started intermittent fasting, and for like 6 weeks, I was like, hey, the scale is moving down. But after 6 weeks or so, it all came back and then some. And I was crushed. I was like, why did I do this? And I was doing it with my cycle, and I was doing it all the ways that they say you need to do it to be healthy. It wasn't for me. I regret trying it, and I'm not saying no one should do it. I know that men do really well on it, but I think you need to do your research, okay? So Trim Healthy Mama talks about intermittent fasting and says that there are some documented health benefits to fasting, and they're not saying they're not, but getting really deep into it, they've come to the conclusion that it's not conducive if you want to become a burning body, which is our goal. We want our bodies to burn fat, to have metabolisms that work well and function well. And, that's one of those things that can actually be counterintuitive. Okay, so they explain that if you read chapter 6, wisdom is eating, which is what we're studying now, that over time, our metabolism becomes slower to match it adapts. It's so smart. It becomes slower to match, your eating schedule. So your eating window, which is what intermittent fasting is, you only eat during a certain time period, becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, and your leptin levels dip. Now, this is what happened to me. Your active thyroid levels also start dipping dramatically. So after I started intermittent fasting, my doctor diagnosed me, and there's not a test for it. So he was a functional medicine doctor, with leptin resistance, and then insulin resistance followed after that. Leptin resistance, I believe, is usually a precursor to insulin resistance. So that was my experience with intermittent fasting. Now, if you've been in my boot camp, we have all those cheat sheets and resources for your meal timing, like how to eat before and after a workout, all that stuff. You need to be eating every 3 to 4 hours on THM. I recommend shortly after you wake up for your first meal. And one of the reasons for this is that fasting can stress your body out. And Trim Healthy Mama talks about, if you read this chapter, about how the neuropeptide kisspeptin is responsible for your endocrine and reproductive functions. And while we are, as women, we have two areas that, are the areas of the kisspeptin neurons. We only have two. We have two, but men only have one. So we have a double sensitivity to restricting food, because fasting causes those large drops in these levels. And as it drops, our glucose tolerance and fat distribution and all of those things start to cause problems, and they become worse and worse as we age. So I'm not going to read through the chapter. I know you guys read this in the study. So they talked about the things that fasting can help with, and then talks about other things that work better for those. So there are a few benefits to fasting that you can find in more efficient ways that don't stress your body out with the other things mentioned in Trim Healthy Wisdom. It's very fascinating. If you haven't read this chapter yet, I highly recommend it. So they talk about fasting about 12 hours overnight, which I firmly believe. I will say, doing this boot camp, THM boot camp, and coaching women individually through my boot camp for 6.5 years. I keep forgetting how long it is. It's been so long, but doing that, I've had thousands of women come through. It's another situation where I know this is anecdotal, but I believe the science and the studies support it. Getting that timing down is key for just about everybody who wants to lose weight. Okay. So we don't want to be skipping breakfast. It's the best time for our body to burn fuels. So we want to be sure that we're not spiking our cortisol. We want to be sure that we're staying insulin sensitive throughout the day. Having breakfast prevents that cortisol from spiking. So it's so important. Okay. So if you are skipping meals, if you are getting to a place where you feel like THM isn't working so well for you, I want you to look at your timing first. That is something that's really important, and that Wisdom in Eating chapter is all about that. So please pay attention to your timing. If you're in boot camp with me, I've already given gentle rear end kicks constantly over that particular issue, because we need it. We need to be eating every 3 to 4 hours. It's really important. Eating breakfast is important. There are more studies. I even was reading a study that came out a few days ago. They're constantly doing studies on this, and it just reaffirmed getting your good breakfast in, and then maybe if you have a lighter dinner but you're still hitting your protein target and you're getting some vegetables in, that seems to be a fantastic key for weight loss for a lot of people. So don't skip eating. Don't do that. That's basically what chapter 6 says. And then chapter 7, we're getting into our protein. And if you're in boot camp, you've got this down and you've got all the cheat sheets for it. But if you are not familiar with the 3 levels of protein nerd, that's what this chapter is all about. Becoming a protein nerd means that you are level 1, you're just kind of like, where's my protein with every meal? Level 2 is where I start you at in boot camp, where you're saying, am I getting 25 grams with every meal? And then level 3, we're bumping it up a notch, and we get there in boot camp 2, where we're looking at exactly what's in your protein. Are you getting enough after a workout? And all of that. So pay attention to what's on your plate. Make sure that you're getting enough protein. And if you were interested in that protein level, protein nerd levels in the Wisdom book, they've also covered that a lot in the podcast. So basically, our goal to have burning bodies is that we have to build muscle because muscle is your metabolism. And as we age, I believe it's over the age of 30 that you start to lose muscle mass. You need to be getting a certain number of these essential amino acids after a meal or snack to build muscle. And if you're getting your 25 grams of protein 4 times a day, you're likely to be slowing down or stopping your muscle loss. But there are so many benefits, and it's so necessary to have that clean, lean body mass so that our body can handle insulin. We can be sure that we're not gaining fat, and we can clean the muscle that we have. So I loved these chapters. I hope you did too. I had posted some questions for you guys. I hope they were interesting. And if you haven't looked at them yet, they were on this event. But some simple ways for protein. Let's chat just a little bit about some tips to get protein in. So if you're super busy like I am, or you have kids, or you're running around, or you work, or you have a busy schedule, anything, having easy proteins is absolutely necessary for being successful on plan. And I really mean that. Imagine that it's time to eat and you need to come up with a meal, and you can think of 3 things that you have in your fridge, freezer, or pantry that you can use. Protein should be the base of every meal and snack. And as you're building your meal based on your protein, you need to make it easy. So the way that I teach my clients to make it easier to stay on plan is that we have a plan A, and then we have our backup plans at all times. Plan B, plan C, plan D. So that basically in boot camp, you're eliminating your excuses for going off plan, right? So your plan A is a meal plan. So let's say you have a full meal plan. I have lots of free ones at thewellplannedkitchen.com. Trim Healthy Mama has them on their website. Let's say you've got a meal plan, and then you blow a tire, or you get stuck at a doctor's appointment, or a neighbor comes over unexpectedly, and then you don't have time to make the roast that you plan to make, or put a whole chicken in the oven, or broil fish, or whatever you planned. You have to have easy backups, really easy backups to fall back on that you can make quickly and easily so that you can stay on plan. Because that first kind of oh, this isn't going to work, or maybe I'm missing an ingredient, or maybe one of my teenagers ate this thing that I was planning to eat for dinner tonight. Well, we can't make it. My default used to be, all right, let's order a pizza, or okay, let's break out the Kraft macaroni and cheese, or let's get Chinese food. It used to be something off plan. So what you have to do to be successful with THM is to develop the ability to have all of your backups. It's just being prepared, have all of your backups ready to go so that your default becomes an on-plan meal that's going to help you lose weight instead of gaining it. That's absolutely necessary. So what can that look like? Well, I've got my pantry meal ebook that has a bunch of ideas for putting together shelf-stable foods that go in one basket in your pantry that you can throw together in 5 or 10 minutes for an on-plan meal. That's one option. Another option besides pantry baskets is having just canned chicken meals, canned tuna meals, things like that. Come up with some, and I've got some of those recipes in that book too, but come up with some things on your own that you just think your family would eat or enjoy. Freezer meals are an option, but I don't really love freezer meals, even though I've put together some free freezer cooking sessions. I like to freeze components of meals. So right now in my freezer, I've got cooked quinoa that's frozen, and if you don't have time to do that, you can buy bagged cooked quinoa from the freezer section at a lot of grocery stores. You can do the same for rice, but you can also make it and freeze your own if you have time. I have those things. Then for protein, I've got lean ground beef that's been rinsed so I can use it in any fuel type, cooked, rinsed, cooled, frozen, and then I can just thaw it pretty quickly. I've got white meat, I've got dark meat, I've got a lot of different components that I can build a meal with. Since they're separated, they will thaw more quickly, and I can throw together a last minute meal with those. You can grab a rotisserie chicken. You can grab like a Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. You can have smoothies for dinner. We not too long ago did smoothie night for dinner because I didn't have time to cook, and I had pulled out a huge batch of pre-cooked frozen THM pancakes. There's lots of things you can do. So you need to have a list. Write it down. What are your backup meals? What are your simple proteins that you can base meals around? Make sure you have some kind of powder, even if it's just one. Have either collagen or THM essential or a protein powder. If you're on a budget, it doesn't have to be THM's optimized protein powder. You can have an on plan one. They do have some at the store that work on plan for sure, but have something that you can make a quick smoothie with. And if you don't have that, throw some Greek yogurt or cottage cheese into a smoothie. But have some ideas for simple, easy things. Deli meat. I like frozen shrimp because it's an FP and it thaws so fast. It's faster than fish. So, for example, since I'm trying out all the Trim Healthy Wisdom stuff right now, since I'm coming up with all of these ideas and cheat sheets and meal plans for my boot camp, I'm sticking to the wisdom plan right now. So I'm eating a lot more E's, which have been fabulous, by the way, and I'm feeling fantastic with them. But the other day I didn't have anything ready. I'd been eating from a rotisserie chicken and ran out of all the white meat. So I was like, what am I going to do? I just sauteed some frozen shrimp. It took a couple of minutes. I threw them in 2 corn tortillas, had a smear of microwaved black beans on them with some taco seasoning. It was super fast, but it was delicious. I put a lot of lime juice on there. And then since I'm trying to get my veggies in, I just grabbed a handful of lettuce, washed it, threw it on a plate, salt, pepper, some lime juice, some water, no oil. And if you're reading from Healthy Wisdom, you'll get why. But it was super simple, super fast, and not too complicated, even though I was still cooking something. And I think you need to be able to have some things that you can grab that don't require cooking in order to eat on time. So my goal for each of my clients, the first goal is we eat on plan and on time. And those are the things that help a ton. If you're wanting to eat on plan and you're wanting to eat on time, having some grab and go things is really good. Tuna pouches are great. One of the fastest things you can do, so I will give you a disclaimer, personal information you probably didn't care about at all. I hate celery. It's the one food that you couldn't pay me to eat. I think it's awful. It tastes like spicy water. I don't like it at all. So I don't put celery in my Waldorf cottage cheese salad. But the Waldorf cottage cheese salad that Trim Healthy Mama has can be made so fast. If you don't want to chop salad, if you do want to chop celery, go for it. It's fine. I know actually one of my clients, I had her, she wanted the celery, but she was like, it takes so long to chop. So I just had her take the celery sticks and she was scooping up the Waldorf salad and eating it that way. It eliminated a step. But the way I make my Waldorf salad is I will chop an apple. That just takes a couple minutes, even though I'm the queen of making things faster. I think that's unavoidable. You're going to be just chopping the apple. And I will just crush a couple of pecans because I think the original recipe calls for walnuts, but I love pecans. I do the Cajun seasoning, the cottage cheese, and since Trim Healthy Wisdom came out, I've been adding a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. Just takes I think the last time I put it together, it was like 3 minutes, start to finish. And I had a complete protein snack or meal, sorry. My full lunch took like 3 minutes to put together. That's one of my backup go-to lunches. But I've got lots of dinners too. I've got lots of things that are super simple, easy for the family. That's what you need to come up with, and it all starts with your protein. So, my suggestion, always have Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, rotisserie chicken, shredded meat in your freezer, ground beef in your freezer. Have all those things in your fridge and freezer and pantry that you can use at a moment's notice for protein. And once you've got the protein down, then it's easy enough to come up and build out the rest of the meal. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks for hanging out with me today. We're going to be covering a lot more next week. And as we get into more of the meat of this, I'm hoping not to take too much of your time, but this book study is so much fun for me and I'm glad you guys are joining in. So I will be posting a lot more. And as we go through this, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope you have a wonderful week and I will talk to you soon. Bye.